The first thing Emma felt was the look before she ever understood it. It followed her through the steam of her coffee and the soft noise of the cafe. It rested on her shoulders like a question she did not yet know how to answer. Oh, she was used to being alone, but this felt different. Like someone had quietly stepped into the same moment with her. The cafe sat on a corner in downtown Portland, where the mornings smelled like rain and fresh bread. Emma came there almost every day before work. She liked the window seat because it let her watch the street without being part of it. People hurried past with phones in their hands and thoughts somewhere else. She stayed still. She always did. That was where she noticed him, across the street. Near the old bookstore, a man stood with his back against the window. He was tall, dressed simply, with a calm face that looked older than his years. He held a book most days, though she rarely saw him turn a page. His eyes lifted often, not sharply, not boldly, but with care. When they met her direction, he never stared too long. When she noticed him notice her, he looked away. Emma told herself it meant nothing. Cities were full of strangers who crossed paths without ever touching lives. She had lived in enough of them to know. She was 38, settled in her habits, careful with her heart. She had loved once in a way that cost her more than she expected. After that, she learned to keep her world quiet. Still, the man stayed. Days passed. Then weeks, then months. The weather shifted from light fall rain to cold winter mornings. Emma's coat grew thicker. Her coffee grew stronger. And the man across the street remained part of her routine, like the barista who remembered her order, or the bus that arrived late. She never told anyone about him. There was no reason to. What could she say? That a stranger watched her drink coffee, that she liked it more than she should. Some mornings, Emma felt bold enough to look directly at him. When she did, her chest tightened. His eyes held warmth, not hunger, not demand, just attention. Like he was listening without words. Other mornings she avoided the window. On those days, she felt foolish, like she was hiding from something that did not even exist. Emma worked as a graphic designer for a small firm. Her days were filled with color and quiet deadlines. Her coworkers were kind, but busy with families and plans she no longer had. At lunch, she ate alone. At night, she returned to her apartment, where the silence felt heavy but safe. She told herself she liked it this way. But the watching changed something. It made her aware of herself again. The way she smiled at small jokes, the way she brushed her hair behind her ear when she thought, the way she leaned forward when she was interested. She had not thought about these things in years. One morning, she laughed out loud at something she read. The sound surprised her. When she looked up, she saw him smiling too, like the laugh had crossed the street and landed with him. Her face warmed. She looked down quickly, heart beating faster than it should. She did not smile again that day. Emma began to wonder about him in quiet moments, where he lived, what his voice sounded like, whether he worked nearby or was simply passing time. She imagined him inside the bookstore, running his fingers along the spines, choosing stories carefully. She did not imagine romance. She did not let herself go that far. Watching was safe. Being watched was safer than being touched by hope. One Friday morning, the cafe was louder than usual. A group of students crowded near the counter. Emma waited longer for her drink. She finally sat down. She noticed the bookstore window was empty. He was not there. The space felt strange, like a missing note in a song. She told herself it meant nothing. People had days off. People moved on. She finished her coffee and left without looking back. The next day, he returned. Relief surprised her. She felt it settle in her chest before she could stop it. She did not know why his presence mattered, only that it did. Winter deepened. The days grew shorter. The sky stayed gray. Emma started bringing a notebook with her, though she rarely wrote more than a few lines. She liked the feeling of pretending she had something important to say. One morning, she noticed something new. He was not leaning against the window. He stood closer to the street now, like he was considering crossing it. Her breath caught. When their eyes met, he hesitated, then stepped back again. Emma felt disappointed, and the feeling scared her. She reminded herself that she did not know him, that this was nothing, that she was reading meaning into habit, but habits shape lives. She knew that too. The watching went on. Then one morning, Emma woke with a strange sense of restlessness. She stared at the ceiling longer than usual. Her apartment felt too quiet. The idea of the cafe suddenly felt heavy, like something expected of her. Without planning it, she chose a different route to work. She walked past a small diner instead. She bought coffee there, drank it, standing up, and left. The decision felt small, but her hands shook as she dropped the cup in the trash. All day. She wondered if he noticed. The next morning, she avoided the cafe again, and the next. Each day, a mix of relief and loss followed her. The city felt wider, without that single point of connection. On the fourth day, she returned. The cafe door opened with its familiar sound. Emma stepped inside, heart beating faster than reason allowed. She ordered her coffee. She turned toward the window. The chair was empty. Across the street, the bookstore window reflected only passing cars and gray sky. No man, no book, no waiting, eh? Strange ache filled her chest. It was sharp and quiet like regret. She sat down anyway. She told herself she was being dramatic. She finished her drink more quickly than usual and left. That night, Emma dreamed of standing behind glass, waving to someone who could not see her. The next morning, she returned to the cafe again. He was there. Relief hit her so hard she had to sit down before her drink arrived. He looked the same, calm and still, but something in his posture felt tense, like he had been waiting for something that might not come back. When their eyes met this time, he did not look away right away, neither did she. The moment stretched, fragile and full. Then he lowered his gaze as if giving her space to decide what came next. Emma's hands wrapped tightly around her cup. She realized then that she had a choice. She could keep sitting by the window, letting the days pass. Or she could change something small and see what happened. She finished her coffee slowly. When she stood to leave, she glanced once more across the street. He looked up again, hopeful in a way that felt almost painful. Emma walked out into the cold air. She did not cross the street, but she did not forget him either. And for the first time in a long while, she knew this quiet watching was only the beginning of something neither of them could fully control. Emma did not know why, but that morning she felt different. The rain had stopped, leaving streets that smelled of wet asphalt and pine. She walked toward the cafe as usual, but this time she noticed every detail. The way the sunlight hit the corner of the bookstore, the way the traffic lights changed rhythm, the way people moved with purpose and yet seemed unaware of her presence. And then she saw him, Daniel, across the street, leaning against the same window he always leaned against, yet something had shifted in the way he carried himself. He wasn't just watching her anymore. He was waiting. Her heartbeat jumped. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind her coat, to vanish into the crowd. But something stronger than fear moved her forward. She walked past the door, paused, and then turned toward the window seat. This time, she did not look away when their eyes met. There was no hesitation in her glance. She let herself linger just long enough for Daniel to notice that she was aware of him. Really aware. For months, they had existed in separate worlds, their lives intersecting only through glances and fleeting moments of recognition. And yet, now something had changed. Emma realized that the balance had shifted. The observer had become the observed. And the thought thrilled her more than it scared her. She could feel the tension, delicate yet undeniable, building between them. Daniel felt it too. He noticed the change the moment she returned. There was a steadiness in her posture, a quiet confidence in the way she held herself that he had never seen before. For months, he had watched her from a distance, careful not to interfere, careful not to intrude. Now, she was stepping into his world in a way that made him feel exposed, and for the first time, he realized how much he had wanted this. They did not speak that morning. Words were unnecessary. It was enough to share the same space, to acknowledge each other without forcing the connection. Emma sipped her coffee slowly, and Daniel shifted slightly, leaning closer to the window, though still outside, still careful. It was a delicate dance of proximity and distance, one they both understood instinctively. Later that week, Emma found herself inside the bookstore. She had gone there on impulse, drawn by the pull she could not name. Daniel was there too, quietly, browsing the shelves as though nothing had changed. And yet everything had changed. When their eyes met this time, it was different. There was recognition, yes, but also an unspoken understanding. They were no longer strangers passing in the margins of each other's lives. They were participants, cautiously, carefully stepping into the same story. Emma approached him, pretending to browse the books. Her fingers traced the spines, stopping occasionally as if she were indecisive. Daniel noticed his attention shifting subtly from the titles to her movements. He wondered how long it had taken her to gather the courage to come inside, to enter the space he had always occupied from the outside. The thought made him both nervous and excited. "Hi," she said softly, almost a whisper. It was simple, ordinary, yet it carried the weight of months of observation, of longing, of curiosity. Daniel smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Hi," he replied, and the word felt heavier than it seemed. It was the beginning of something, fragile and real. They began talking about the books, about the weather, about little things that mattered only because they were shared. Conversation flowed cautiously, each sentence carefully chosen. Yet there was a rhythm, a pattern that suggested more. They spoke for a while, and in the quiet moments between words, they watched each other. Not in the way of strangers, not with distant curiosity, but with a new kind of attention. Emma noticed the way Daniel's hands moved when he held a book, the way his lips curved when he smiled, the subtle movements that made him who he was. Daniel noticed the way Emma's eyes lingered on details, the softness in her expression when she listened, the quiet strength she carried even in hesitation. Neither of them rushed. They had both been hurt before. Both knew the dangers of expectation, the weight of disappointment. But here in the bookstore, among the shelves and the quiet hum of the city outside, they found a space where fear could be set aside, if only for a moment, as the afternoon waned. Emma and Daniel walked out together, neither of them speaking much. They moved through the streets side by side, aware of each other, yet still cautious. It was a strange comfort, this quiet proximity, the sense that their worlds had aligned just enough to touch. Over the following days, the pattern continued. They met sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at the bookstore, sometimes by chance on the streets. Each encounter was a step, a careful negotiation of emotions and boundaries. The watching continued, but now it was mutual. Emma found herself looking for him in the crowd, noticing his presence before he even saw her. Daniel found himself wondering where she was thinking about her in moments of idle time. The change in their relationship was subtle but profound. Where once Daniel had been the observer, Emma now shared the role. She learned to watch him without imposing, to notice without expecting, to care without overwhelming. And in turn, Daniel began to see himself reflected in her attention, in the quiet acknowledgement of his existence. It was a new form of intimacy, one built on observation and presence rather than possession. One evening, as they parted ways after a brief meeting at the cafe, Daniel lingered longer than usual, watching Emma walk away. She turned once, just enough to meet his gaze, and he held it, feeling a connection that had been months in the making. It was an unspoken promise, a delicate acknowledgement that this was only the beginning. Emma felt it too. She walked home slowly, thinking about the small moments, the subtle gestures, the way their lives had intertwined without words or forced declarations. For the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of something she had thought lost: hope. Not the naive hope of immediate fulfillment, but a careful, patient hope that grew from shared attention and mutual respect. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters became more frequent, more natural. They began to talk about dreams, about small personal stories, about life beyond the cafe and the bookstore. The connection deepened, not in dramatic declarations, but in quiet understanding. Each smile, each shared glance, each small gesture reinforced the bond that had begun with watching. There were moments of hesitation, times when doubt crept in, reminding them of past disappointments and losses. Yet they persisted, not recklessly, but with awareness and care. Every encounter was a choice, every glance a confirmation that they wanted to continue, that they valued the presence of the other. One rainy afternoon, as they stood beneath a shared awning outside the bookstore, Daniel reached for Emma's hand. It was a tentative gesture, not bold, not demanding, but intentional. Emma did not pull away. She allowed her fingers to intertwine with his, feeling the warmth and the quiet courage it took to reach across the distance they had maintained for so long. The city around them moved on. Cars honked, pedestrians passed, and life continued, indifferent to the small story unfolding on the corner. But for Emma and Daniel, that moment mattered. It was not dramatic. It was not rushed. It was real. From that day forward, the watching became a shared experience. They no longer observed from a distance. They participated. They engaged. They explored the world together, slowly, cautiously, yet with a sense of possibility that neither had felt in years. Their connection was not perfect. There were missteps, misunderstandings, and days when one or the other felt uncertain. But the foundation built on patience, attention, and quiet acknowledgement allowed them to navigate these moments with care. Emma discovered joy in noticing the small things about Daniel, the way he laughed at something insignificant, the way he concentrated. When reading the subtle kindness in his actions, Daniel discovered the same in Emma: the way she thought before she spoke, the gentle strength in her quiet moments, the warmth she carried even in solitude. Together, they learned that love did not always arrive in grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it began in the simplest of ways: a look held a little longer than expected, a presence acknowledged, a shared moment of quiet understanding. As winter melted into spring, the streets brightened and the city seemed lighter. Emma and Daniel continued their ritual, no longer as observer and observed, but as partners in a quiet, unfolding story. They knew the future was uncertain, as it always is, but for now, they were present fully and intentionally in a way that made every glance, every step, every shared silence meaningful. By the time the first flowers appeared along the sidewalks, Emma realized something profound. The watching had been only the beginning. What mattered now was seeing each other not from a distance, not with hesitation, but with full attention, respect, and care. And in that realization, they both found a quiet, powerful joy that neither had expected but both had longed for, without knowing it, for many months. And so their story continued. Not with drama or haste, but with the slow, steady rhythm of two lives finally noticing each other fully and intentionally. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, both Emma and Daniel felt ready to walk it together.